It's time for World Politics. We'll see who else pops in. Right now, it's me and one of the founders of the network, Kim Calhoun. But one of the first things I was going to mention is that, of course, the whole migrant conversation is coming up again. And the New York City mayor, Eric Adams, has issued a new requirement for a charter bus carrying asylum seekers from Texas. I know that Kim sometimes has family members in Texas and all along those lines. But the New York City mayor, Eric Adams has issued an executive order effective immediately for private buses carrying asylum seekers into New York City from Texas. The executive order will require those charter buses to provide information about the people they are transporting and to give 32 hours notice before arriving in the city. So I guess they just can't pop in willy-nilly and all along those lines. At least that's what the conversation seems to be right now, because charter buses will now be required to drop off asylum seekers in the city only between 8:30 a.m. until 12 p.m. Monday through Friday at designated locations. So I guess they're going to put a time restriction on it as well. The driver and bus companies that do not follow those requirements will face a Class B misdemeanor with possible fines, lawsuits, and even risk of having their buses impounded. So we are definitely seeing folks that are going at it each other, even in the state to state kind of debate around migrants. So apparently Mayor Eric Adams said when he announced the executive order on Wednesday, we are really saying to bus operators and companies, do not participate in Governor Abbott's action. Many of the buses carrying asylum seekers have been sent by the state of Texas. We need action, and we need it right now. New York City is a city built by immigrants. We will work together to emerge from this crisis stronger than ever before. But this is a national problem. This has only been exacerbated by Governor Abbott's cruel and inhumane policies, is what Adam says, and all along those lines. And in a statement, there had to be a counter from Texas Governor Abbott and everything, but in a statement, the spokesman for Texas Governor Greg Abbott responded in part, until President Biden steps up and does his job to secure the border, Texas will continue busing migrants to sanctuary cities. So Adams said more than 7,000 asylum seekers have gone through New York's intake system in just the last 2 weeks. Advocate says it makes sense that the city wants to put more order in place when it comes to their arrival. At a minimum, it can receive the bus in a way that people can quickly be moved from the bus they've been on for a couple of days to a city office where they can be assessed, according to Josh Goldstein, staff attorney with the Legal Aid Society, and all in that space. So I've got Steve Rao with me. I've got Rick Rosner. And of course, I've got the founder of the network as well. So, Rick, what are you thinking? Eric Adams has got this whole thing going on where he's going to say that the migrant buses just can't come willy-nilly into the city. They've got to wait, I think he said 36 hours before they can, so he can have advance notice in order to know what to do with the migrants if they're coming from Texas. And I think there might
how is he gonna stop them from doing that?
Well, he signed an executive order, so I guess they've got to provide information about the people they are transporting and give 32 hours notice. And it sounds like that he might be going after the drivers and the bus companies if they don't abide to his executive order. But that would just be being a guess in that situation, as I am not a lawyer, don't even play one on TV.
Have they separated from the country?
Who? New York?
Or Texas? I mean, I know Texas always wanted to, but has one or the other separated from the country? This, to me, is a violation of our constitutional rights. I mean, who the hell is he? Excuse me, but who the hell is somebody to say a bus can't come in with asylum seekers? The mayor needs to go get a reality check.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I also hear what he's saying, because I guess his notion is that the people have been put on the buses by the governor of Texas, who is actually throwing these people onto the buses and everything. So I think that they are not even necessarily asking for asylum from they're actually probably asking for asylum in Texas, and then the Texas governor is sending them to New York because New York is a sanctuary city.
Well, both sides are doing what they want without, I'm sure each side is breaking some kind of rule or law or something. It's all political posturing. And we've got a ton of asylum seekers coming in, though, our issues with undocumented immigrants are nothing like what happens in European countries, where we're talking about 4% of the population being undocumented. Over in Europe, you've got countries where 10% and more of the population is undocumented.
It's just a crazy time out there. I know. We have so many. Well, Mark, thank you for letting me in. I'm here for a few minutes today, but I think this is an issue. I haven't talked about immigration a lot, but the fact is that there could be ways we could control this migration, but there's never ever anything done at the federal level. That's the only way they can fix this. There's a confusion between immigration and asylum, and we don't have enough courts to process these cases. And we do have legal immigration laws, and we've got a backlog of those trying to come here legally, especially from India, with over 350,000 waiting for their green cards. And in North Carolina, in the Triangle, we have over probably 15,000. But then you've got migrants just coming in the border. And it's just unfortunate because they come in there. And my daughter, actually, who is a journalist, said that when she was in Greece and she saw these migrants coming in, she was in El Paso. They were jumping off bridges and breaking arms and legs, and some of them were on dialysis with no money, suffering, separating the family. So anyway, that's my food for thought. And what I was going to do today,
but Steve, along those same lines, apparently a number of the Democratic mayors, and I think this is where the whole thing is coming up with the New York mayor, are asking Biden to actually have an emergency declaration about immigration. So if we've got certain states, be it Florida or Texas or other states, that are shipping them into what are called sanctuary cities, then maybe there's got to be the federal government stepping in and all along those lines and having some sort of emergency declaration. So to everybody on the panel, is this something that needs to be considered? Do we need an emergency declaration to clarify what's going on with our immigration policy until we get a more uniform policy and a more concrete policy?
The last time we had federal immigration reform was 37 years ago under Reagan.
Yeah.
So and things have changed immensely, and there's new technology, and we could try a whole bunch of new policies like incentives for people who want to come here to stay in their home countries and sign up. There's a bunch of things we could try, but none of it's going to get tried because, Republicans are intransigent. They'd rather bitch about it and use it as a political wedge. That's all I've got.
Well, I want to point out something. A lot of these migrants or people coming over here, they're willing to work and work hard and put in a lot of sweat that a lot of people in our country are not willing to do anymore. And I just listened to the Federal Reserve end of year report. They had a couple of meetings in December, and I tried to catch as many as I could. But I just finished listening to the last one, and one of the things mentioned is we have more jobs available than we do people to fulfill the jobs. Mm-hmm. So fill the jobs. You know what? I am sick and tired of hearing we don't have enough people to work the jobs, but I'm also sick and tired of walking out in the streets and seeing homeless people. And they're homeless because they can't get a job because they don't have a home. Okay, that cycle is probably one of the.
But Kim, I don't know if you watched the Kwanzaa panel that I was part of, but one of the speakers that was on that panel that I moderated actually brought up what you just said, which is that a number of people that are, unsheltered or that don't have a home are actually working, and sometimes they might even be working at Duke and some other affluent places where they are making less than affordable wages, so therefore
Well,
they might not be able to afford the house that they need and all in that space. So there's some people that are even here in North Carolina that are not living in great housing or even any housing in some cases, but they might literally be working at some of our major academic institutions because they might be getting paid less than $20 an hour for some of these jobs.
So it used to be that if you were undocumented and you joined the military,
There you go.
at the end of your service, you could be considered for citizenship. And I think under Trump that went away. But the phone's going off. I didn't. The only immigration reform that the Republicans are going to approve is punitive measures. So in things that, stuff that sounds harsh. But there might be room even under that, like the stay in Mexico until your number's called policy. Republicans like that. And if the Democrats could figure out a way for that to work, that could be one aspect of federal immigration reform. That stuff that looks punitive enough against immigrants to satisfy the Republicans, but it is actually feasible and not as cruel as, like family separation.
Yeah, that could be interesting. We can get to that as well. Hey, Sasha is going to bring up an issue that you might be interested in as well, since we're talking world politics. And apparently there is an article that I read recently that said that Vladimir Putin is betting the farm on a Donald Trump presidential win. So apparently that is what some people are saying, including this expert that I'm getting ready to quote. So, he is the front runner for the Republican nomination. Incumbent Joe Biden is set to lead the Democrats, making next year a repeat of the 2020 election, and Putin himself is set to run in the March 2024, likely against token opposition. And like I said, this one expert is claiming that Putin and Russia have a lot to gain from a Trump win. So John Lau, an associate fellow of the Russia and Eurasian program at Chatham House, told the Mirror that Putin is betting the farm on a return of Trump. Even if Trump delivered little for Russia in the first term, heaven knows what they discussed when they met in Helsinki. There's a good chance if Trump comes to power, he will do something radical in terms of foreign policy. And who knows, maybe he'll just show that he is a friend of Mr. Putin and all along that line. He added this could bring more into question the U.S. commitment to NATO, for example. Putin is playing a big game on a global scale, and Trump has made it clear he says NATO as a drain on U.S. resources and could pull the U.S. out of the defense pact. So what are your thoughts? Is Mr. Putin, while he's in the middle of his own battles and everything, silently rooting for a Trump victory because Mr. Trump could be a very major ally of his in the White House, even in the war against Ukraine, no matter what he might be saying and everything?
Unlike old MacDonald, Mr. Putin has lost his farm. He cannot bet his farm simply because he doesn't have it anymore. He is responsible for killing his own 330,000 people that make him not just war criminals, make him an evil of all times, comparable only to Hitler and, I don't know,
Stalin. Stalin killed 30, 40 million of his own people.
Stalin had more time. Stalin was operating since 1917 until he died in 1953. Look at how many years he was, and he was quite successful. Yeah, he was killing a lot of people. If Putin would have lived in his time and he had so much time on his hands, sure, he would probably be somewhere around. But it's different times, of course. In Stalin's time, it was political killings inflicted on people who wouldn't support socialism or communism full-heartedly, and they were just killed, or they got into Gulag for 15 years, and once they left Gulag 15 years later, and they were nothing, they would leave after Gulag maybe another 2-3 years, and they would die anyway. So this is incredible situation. Yeah, okay.
But Sasha, along those same lines and everything, I got a question that Rick has brought up a couple times. I'm definitely interested to hear about this concept. Before I get to that concept and everything, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has issued an urgent appeal for continued military aid from the U.S. as he arrived in Washington. And definitely there is an aid package worth $60 million that is currently stalled in Congress and apparently is facing opposition from the Republicans. So that's where I think some people are wondering about where Mr. Trump's allegiance will be should he come into office and everything. So are we going to get this money, and is the money going to come and everything? Because there is a number of folks that are seeing this money being stalled in Congress, and apparently it's the Republicans that are stalling it this time around.
So Biden just authorized $250 million, which is not that much, to go to Ukraine, and that's the last money that can be authorized without the Republicans going along with it. But in practical terms, what does Putin, supporting Trump mean? It means that over the next 11 months, we're going to get bombarded with a ton of propaganda via social media because it's really cheap to do. And Russia has done it before each of our previous 2 presidential elections. It doesn't take $1 billion. It takes a few tens of millions of dollars. They've got this, I talk about that, they've got this building in St. Petersburg that's just full of jackasses like myself who just come up with dumb, angry tweets all day, and they flood Twitter, which got rid of its security. Elon Musk got rid of all the people who might filter out the garbage, and they send it out and masquerade it as not coming from Russia. And it's all to confuse and piss off Americans leading up to the election.
There is a lot of lost identities. A lot of American people are not aware that Russians already stole their identity, whether it's Mr. Smith or Mr. Lamparello.
I think, well, Mark, I want to wish
companies already did that 25 years ago.
Yeah,
I gave up worrying about my identity. The thing you need to do is just stay on top of watching your bank account, watching your credit worthiness. But all of that stuff was sold away. I mean, heck, when you go get a refi on your mortgage, they sell your name, the credit people, Experian and all them. And, by the time you're done, you're getting 100 stupid phone calls a day because they sold your name to everyone. So they destroy your credit if you clean your credit up and all this other stuff. So there is no security. Just letting you guys know.
Hackers don't need your bank account at all. All they need your name and email.
They don't need anything.
Or maybe Facebook or Twitter if you have one or so on. They need very little in order to approach you with almost credible information and messages and so on.
I got in a Twitter fight with some woman with a very American name, let's say Mary Jacobson. Mm-hmm. And I started to believe, based on some of the stuff that she said, that she wasn't real. So then I started clicking around. I searched for her on Google, and then I found a bunch. Then I went to Facebook, and I found 7 accounts for somebody with this very American name that were in Russia.
That's just. Well, I want to wish everyone a happy New Year. I've got to run, but I think my take on the Ukraine is that I think that it's not going well for Ukraine now as well as it was a few months ago. Russia's made an increase in the defense. I think aid is important if they're going to successfully win the war, but Putin is obviously waiting until Trump is elected, if he is elected, and then, of course, negotiate some kind of deal with him. The other thing I was going to talk about today, before I close out, I just was going to say some things that happened this year. Sorry, Sasha, because I've got to run, but I'll go ahead and make your point. I've got to go.
My point is that you're witnessing a spectacle about Ukraine is not getting help and Russia can go in and take it over. It's a spectacle. You can go to the Broadway show and have about the same effect. Russia is begging for peace. Ukraine just got first 16 F-16 fighters.
Right.
They're getting the tanks, the latest Leopards, the latest the American Abrams tanks, and so on. Ukraine will have so much arms that they will be begging to slow deliveries because they will have no spaces even to
Right.
care about it and to house it and so on. So don't worry about Ukraine. They are playing very slow game. All they need now is to kill as many Russians as possible. And 1,000 plus every single day for the last 2.5 months, it's a done deal. So count how much, 25,000 they lost in the last couple of months. It's just the beginning. They will keep losing. They already lost 330,000. They will lose twice as
Yeah.
much in next
The only
year.
thing I was going to end with before we go to Rick, because I've got to take off, but just a couple things. It's been a tumultuous year globally, politically. I came up with a top 10 list. Some of the things that we could talk about next week, or I'll actually maybe be gone for a few weeks, but would be the global recession it looks like we're headed into. Obviously, the war in Hamas, continued war in Ukraine. There's been some crisis in Sudan. AI, everyone talking about that with the anniversary of ChatGPT. And of course, the relationship between China and the U.S. And let's not forget North Korea now saying they're going to up their nuclear weapons. So lots of disruption in the world. And, of course, with Hezbollah today attacking Israel. So it's going to be a very turbulent year. And all of this going on while less than 1 year from now, we'll know who the next president of the United States is, whether it'll be whoever. Is it going to be Biden? Is it going to be Trump? Is it going to be someone new that we're not talking about? And so anyway, that's my wrap for the year. We can talk about it, this show if you want. But have a great one, folks, and go Pack. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
There's something to be said to understanding all of these global contentions going on, and could that impact our election next year? Who could be the strongest person to maintain our peace among all of these things? And right now we don't have these because we're bombing people on Christmas Day, and there's attacks everywhere, but we are not living among peace, and so we're going to be drawn into all of this mess before long if we're not careful. Yes.
If your goal is a peace and nothing else, there is a very, very easy recipe. Get your armies out of Europe, Middle East, China, Antarctica, South America, if there are any, and just get them out of elsewhere. Just house them somewhere in San Diego, maybe Boston, maybe a few other American cities. Cancel the military budget, which is about $1 trillion. Make it to about 50 million will be okay, just to defend against Canada and Mexico. That's all what you need. And you will have a peace. Not a long one, but say for 10, 15 years, you will have a peace. I guarantee that.
I think if everyone just moved to their own room for a while and just minded their own business, we'd have.
Tell that Mr. Putin. Tell it to Iran's Ayatollah. Tell that idiots who are trying to figure out unrest around the world. It doesn't matter whether it's the Far East, whether it's Ukraine or Asia or Latin America. It doesn't matter. All Putin wants to destabilize the Western world. And if Hamas is there, if they can do a little bit here and there before they will be all dead, that's great. So they already stabilized peace in the Middle East for last 2.5 months. 3 months will be very soon. That's a great thing. Okay, who is next? Iran. Well, you know what? Surprisingly enough, Biden can become the greatest president of the United States of all time if he will kill Iranian regime, all the stupid ayatollahs, and so on. Okay, so a couple 100,000 will be killed. But there is no use of these people to be alive, because all they do, they're destabilizing peace and led to deaths of so many people. Look at how many Israelis, how many Palestinian people were killed. Why? Because of these two idiots, Putin and Iranian Ayatollah. Just smash them in pieces, and Biden will be the greatest president of all time.
Right. So the U.S. isn't going home anytime in the near future. We have troops stationed in 800 different places around the world. You know, some places it's just a few, some places it's huge military bases, but we are all over the place. In terms of Ukraine, after 2 years of fighting, Russia does not have deep penetration into Ukraine. The deepest they are is there's a long front of about 470 miles at the east of Ukraine, but the deepest penetration along that front is 100 miles. In a lot of places, it's 60 miles, 80 miles. So they haven't bitten off that much of the country. Now, I got a question for Sasha in the election. So U.S. inflation is at 3% now, and the Fed looks like it might not be raising rates again. Sasha, what do you think? Will the Fed cut rates a couple times between now and the election? And will that further boost the economy and increase Biden's chances of being reelected?
Absolutely. It's the same machine, the Fed, the Biden, or so on. They're just waiting for the right time. Right now is not the right time, simply because people have very short memory span. So if you now will start lowering interest rates, in 3 months, people will not remember even that it ever happened. But if you will start lowering interest rates around May, June, and we'll do it 3 times, May, June, July, August, and September, October, that will be done. The Biden will be elected president. It doesn't matter.
But along those same lines, and this is actually kind of a similar conversation to what Rick just alluded to and everything. You know, there was this major regulation that was introduced in 23, because most of us, whether you live in an apartment or you live in a house, have appliances. And Biden had this appliance regulation that he put out there that gave various regulatory attacks on appliances such as the gas stove, the dishwasher, the air conditioner, the washing machine, and the furnaces. And a lot of people, including those Republican lawmakers, are taking steps in a challenge against such regulation. So they are saying that already dishwashers are over-regulated appliances, and now they've been subjected to tighter regulations under the Biden administration. So when it comes down to that economy, isn't this going to be an issue that the Republicans might win points on, because a lot of people are going to be trying to figure out, you know.
It could be, Mark, but they will lose many more points on abortion issue. That's a done deal. You see, the only one who has some credible chances is Nikki Haley, because at least she's smart enough not to talk about abortion. She's saying that it's basically between woman and her doctor. So she's not exposed as much as other candidates of the Republicans.
Yeah, but and I'll ask Kim this and everything, because part of what this whole conversation is around climate change. Because when it comes to dishwashers, when it comes to washing machines and all these regulations, it's about ways to, you know, keep your clothes and your dishes clean and everything. But it's also about improving the climate. That's the reason I think that even Biden put in these regulations, but now the Republicans are going like it's too much regulations.
Our dishwasher just died. My wife and I spent 3 hours this morning looking at dozens and dozens of models of different dishwashers.
LG. Get LG, okay? It's by far the best.
Too late. I mean, LG, we have a home warranty, and the home warranty didn't even offer us LG. So we're going with GE. The reviews aren't great, but there's only the two of us, so we figure, you know, we're not going to, you know, destroy it too fast with our little loads. But nowhere did we see anything that was at all oppressive about, they're all Energy Star appliances. And so, it wasn't an issue for us. That there was nothing that one way or the other about.
But Rick, that's for you, because the new DOE, Department of Energy Efficiency standards that took effect in 2023 is boosting the installed cost of a new unit by $1,000 or more. And there's some people that are in those product situations that can't afford that extra $1,000 or more.
We shopped around. We saw installation for $200.
Okay.
There you go.
So, and the Republicans desperately search for some little thing, some culture war deal. Like, they're coming for your gas range. They're coming for cows. Meat is going to be illegal. And, most of that stuff does not, capture the attention of America.
But speaking of capturing the attention of America, there is a notion that you brought up, and actually Sasha has brought it up a couple of times as well. But, you study world politics, and this is a world politics show and everything. There is usually two philosophies that exist. It is usually socialism / communism, or Marxism, whatever you want to call it, and capitalism. But you have used a term, which I've heard a lot of people, you made up this term, but it's like a mixture. And then some people would argue that China is a mixture. It isn't a purely socialist country. It is definitely not capitalist, but it has some capitalist aspects. And some people would argue that while we advertise ourselves being capitalist, we have some socialist policies and everything. So most countries, I think, are actually a mixture of both of the two main trends and everything. So would you explain this term that you came up with, Rick, because you came up with this new term?
Well, I just think that technology will mess with capitalism and communism, because is it really communism if robots can make stuff that people need for pretty much nothing? Then is giving people the necessities of life, which cost nothing, is that really communism? Because you're not even giving them anything of value. If robot built clothing, clothing used to cost up to 25, like 100, more than 100 years ago. Clothing and food ate up a quarter of people's income. And with technology, the cost relative to your income of food and clothing has dropped steadily over the past century, and it's going to keep dropping. So what's the big deal about giving people, free basic stuff? And then stuff that's going to get expensive is computation, is information processing. All the stuff that goes into AI and blockchain and crypto takes just a ton of computing, which equals energy, which costs money. So the economy is going to shift and get all weird, and terms like capitalism and communism are going to, be a little bit obsolete. I think
that they're already a little bit obsolete, because I think that most of the countries of the world are a mixture of the various policies and everything. Because I think that there is, even in the U.S., there is some programs that are very socialistic and everything.
I gotta say that the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank, puts out an annual list of, it's called, I think, the Economic Freedom Index, which is pretty much capitalist, most capitalist to most communist. And out of 170 countries ranked, and some countries, 30 countries are so messed up that they can't even be ranked. But out of 170 ranked countries, the US is 25th most capitalist, which is the highest rank of any country our size. You have little countries like Singapore, I think, is always in like the top 3. But we're not socialist. We are, pretty strongly capitalist.
But to hear Adam say it, isn't Singapore a benevolent dictatorship and everything? I know Adam's not here.
Yeah, but it's a dictator. Yeah, sure. They will whip your ass if you get chewing gum on the sidewalk. But they also love it when you are an entrepreneur and make a bunch of money.
Who doesn't, right? And
There-
other countries are the same way. They keep it very clean and they're very strict. And our country always has bad things to say about these countries. Don't go there; they're bad people. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe that country doesn't want us there because we trash places. Look what we've done to space. We trash everything we go to. And maybe there's something to be said about these countries keeping it clean and keeping order. And, that, and I'm not saying I
Hey,
want
Kim,
it. I don't
Kim,
know enough about it, but
I don't know enough either. I don't know enough either. But Kim, along those same lines, one of the most notorious countries. I mean, its leader in the past was no doubt notorious, probably as notorious, if not equally notorious as Mr. Putin and everything. But it's my understanding that and I know there's some people on the network that are big on oil and gas, that in the oil and gas industry, Uganda at one time was run by Idi Amin, who was definitely a dictator and a horrible dictator. At that, he killed many people, probably millions, and all along those lines. But Uganda is now seen as a oil and gas pioneer because of what they are doing with their investment in the oil industry and everything in that space. So I don't know that I want to go visit Uganda. I've never been to Uganda.
I just got to say that Singapore is like 20 square miles.
Right.
The U.S. is like, I don't know, 4.5 million, 5 million square miles. It's much easier to keep Singapore clean than it is to keep the U.S. clean.
Well,
that makes sense.
It's easier to monitor. Every state in our country has its own laws, own rules, own BS, own leaders. I mean, we began this show with that, right? That, you've got their own dictatorship in each state now. I mean, it's really kind of stupid. A lot of people don't even know. Like, here's what's really stupid. My niece can, do whatever drugs she does in Oregon or in Virginia, but you can't do that stuff like marijuana here. And then you got Joe Biden who exonerated or whatever it is everyone who's ever been arrested for using marijuana, or as long as you were not driving under the influence of marijuana and killed someone, your record has been wiped clean because of that. But then you've got this state that says you can, this state that says you can't. And it's just stupid. Everything we're doing in this country is stupid.
But along those same lines, Kim,
it's ran by men, as far as I'm concerned.
Two things along those same lines. Two things I was going to make a good point. One is that it's not just state by state. It's also sometimes the rules change city by city or even county by county. We see that here in North Carolina. You can even see it in New York and a number of other places. But there's still some laws. There's still some laws on the books that exist that, and I'm not going to go into what those laws are. People can do the research and figure out what I'm talking about. But there's still laws, because I know that Rick's show is called Naked at Night, that have to deal with sexual morals and all in that space. But there are activities that an individual enjoys that are still illegal in many states and everything. So you can go look at the crime books and you'll see that
look
you
how
are technically
stupid we
breaking
are.
the law.
We let churches run states. In one state, if you're gay, you can get married. In another state, you can't. And so what if you cross the border and you're married here and not there? I mean, how the hell are they taxing all this bull crap? And again, I'm going to go back to the abortion when you get into the politics part of this. And of course, abortion will become a big issue in the next 6 months. It always does. So it's ridiculous. You got one state you can, one state you can't. You'll be arrested here and not there. And you know what? Excuse the hell out of me. If I get pregnant and decide I can't have this baby, or it's dangerous to me, and the doctor in this state can't operate on me because the state won't allow it, so I cross over to the other state, are they freaking going to arrest me? This is pathetic. This country has become a pathetic means of each individual's religion. And that's what was not supposed to happen.
But speaking of, two things. One, the state was always tied to religion, because I think they actually escaped religious persecution when they came over on the Mayflower. Those that were the part of the what we say is Puritan ethics and everything. But I don't know how much of these Puritan ethics actually really exist, even though we claim that we are a Puritan state or have some Puritan ethics in our governing rules and everything. But how much of that is reality and how much of that is fiction. That's
They
a
didn't
whole
come
nother
over
thing.
here for religion freedom. You know that, right?
That
They
was
did
part
not
of what
come
they
here
did.
for that.
Some of them came over to escape religious persecution in London.
No, they were all heathens over there. They just wanted a place to come. That's what they tell you up here. But when you read the diaries, it's a totally different story. You know, Columbus was telling everyone this is a great place to do slavery. So just bring a couple of guns and you can take over the whole city.
My kid just told Sasha has been holding up his
Oh
hand.
yeah, Sasha, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Sasha.
When you see that I'm holding my hand, could you please stop talking all kind of nonsense and just let me say what I have to say? Because you were for about 5, maybe to 7 minutes, you were talking and talking and talking. Can you repeat what you just said in the last 7 minutes? What was about? What was all that about?
I
It was
jumped
nothing
in
but talk
about the
and
fact
talk
that
and talk. This is really, I'm very upset about that, because I thought that this is a quality show about international politics or so on, and you just keep talking all kind of things
well,
from
we are
this a little bit
talking
of
about the
that.
political aspects.
Just noise, really.
Well,
Okay.
hold on a second.
Now, let me tell you something. I will not allow you to stay and convince the listeners about what you just said about socialism and capitalism, and that they're about the same, and some people are a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You just don't know what you're talking about. Stop talking about something what you don't understand, don't know nothing about. Just stop talking and
Sasha,
talk about
my
something
minor was
else. If you want
political
to talk,
science, so you don't know
ask
what I know and
questions.
don't know and
Okay.
everything. So don't go there, because my minor was
Now,
political science.
okay.
I still study political science. I still
Thanks.
hang out with some
Well, why
political
don't we go
scientists. So
back
don't
to
go
the
there.
topic we can
The
discuss?
topic is this. If you started to talk about it, I wish you wouldn't. But if you did, if you ever read Das Kapital by Karl Marx, he's talking about the major difference between capitalism, which he knew. He knew capitalism as probably Adam Smith or maybe a few other people so well. He knew everything about capitalism. Now, communism and socialism, he didn't know much about it because they didn't exist at that time. But he had a plan what has to happen for them to exist. So the major difference is who owns the means of production. In socialism and communism, as well, it was practiced in the Soviet Union and China for most of the time. It was that the state had 100% of the means of production. You could not have your private even bakery or private cleaners, or they're just, I'm not talking about large enterprises with thousands of workers. Forget about that completely. But even small little enterprise, you couldn't own it. Okay. Now this capitalistic system is completely different. You can own large factories, a small bakery, and just any other business. This is the major difference. If the means of production belong to the state, it's a socialist or communism society. Let's talk about socialism, because communism was never, ever built in any single country in the world. So we don't know what it is. We don't know how it would work, because it's in theory. Now, socialism, we do know how it works. At least it was since 1917 until 1991 in Soviet Union. It has been completely destroyed. It's itself destroyed because that system cannot survive. When everything is owned by all people, but no single person, okay, everything is owned by state. Now, you, a member of the state, so does it mean theoretically that you own a little bit of everything? In practice, you don't own nothing. You have no ownership of anything. So this is a system which is dubious, and even in theory, it's very difficult to understand how it works.
But
You don't own anything. That's
Sasha, that was the point I made. Because if you study Cuba and you study China, they have actually opened up more to private business and everything. So the two countries that are seen as the most socialistic or the most communistic have actually opened up their property to private business. There's actually an expansion of the private
So,
sector
okay.
in Cuba and everything.
Wait a sec. So if socialism or communism, whatever you want to call in Cuba and China, if would work, so why would they open up for private enterprises? Why would they ever done it?
That was the point. I just said that those countries saw the benefits of capitalism, just like there are aspects of the socialism government in terms of some of the ways that they treat certain communities that we have done in the indoctrination of some socialistic programs within the capitalistic system. That is what some people would say about the welfare state and other things. So that's what I meant when I said that both of the primary two systems are borrowing from each other, and that is what even economists and others that study this at major universities have said as well.
Mark, they're doing that not because they're such a benevolent presidents or any other people. They're doing that because they saw what's happened with Soviet Union when it's collapsed, when they were trying to introduce market economy. When Gorbachev came in power in 1985, they were fascinated that they will put a little bit of here, a little bit of there, some private enterprises, or so on. As they started tinkering with the system has collapsed because people saw very clearly for themselves how capitalism could work and what socialism is bankrupt. The country became bankrupt. By 1991, it has collapsed. In early 1992, there was a meeting of all government of Russia, including Yeltsin and Gaidar and many other people. There were 10 people, the top 10 people of the Russia. They had a meeting and they had to decide what to do. There were no bread in Russia, absolutely none. And there was a vessel in Rotterdam with 25 tons of wheat ready to go to St. Petersburg. The only thing is, and it was already paid for, the only thing is there were port charges of $10,000. And all government of Russia, they had to decide what to do, where to find $10,000. This is why I'm saying that Bush Sr. was the worst president ever, where he didn't seize the opportunity, where he could, for $500 million, get all nuclear warheads out of Russia. And Russia would go for it because they didn't have $10,000 at the time. If half billion wouldn't do it, then 1 billion, 2 billions would do it. Yeah, how much
All I'm arguing
America spent on warheads and all this
but
Pentagon
Sasha, all I'm arguing is that if you look at the various countries of the world, all 200 or whatever that they are, most of them are very much a mixed system. I think even Israel is a mixed system as well. And that was the point that I was making, is that the world is going toward more mixed government, where they are borrowing policies from both of the primary systems. Now, you're saying that capitalism is the primary system that is the most successful. I will not argue with that, against that, but I'm just saying that if you want to look at monarchies, if you want to look at socialism, if you want to look at capitalism, if you want to look at oligarchs, if you want to look at anarchy, or if you even want to look at tyranny, a lot of the governments are not one system or another. They are oftentimes mixed government. That is why mixed government is a very popular term around the world.
And who is so successful with a mixed government? Can you tell me? Even
the United States is a mixed government.
Why do you think that the United States is mixed?
I just told you why. There are some policies that are very so much leaning more toward the socialistic side. There are some that are more free market.
No, remember, the means of productions in United States are private only. The government doesn't own factories. The government doesn't own Microsoft or Google or anything.
The government does own some businesses, and the government has several businesses that they own. So there are government-owned businesses and everything. As a matter of fact, you can look at some of the things at RTP, which is partially government-run. RTP was created in this area of North Carolina, and it's partially a mix of government control as well as non-government control. And even Kim can testify to that when they created it in North Carolina, it was a mixed form of what they were doing when they created that Research Triangle Park.
So I will butt in on the Research Triangle Park history, because there was a contract when it was sold
Right.
to be nothing but research and development. It could not have manufacturing. It could not have any businesses at all. In fact, restaurants, anything. Now, you could have a campus facility there, and it was hundreds of, thousands of acres, right? The whole Research Triangle Park. And so what it was meant to do is draw in companies to help employ the big universities that we have here, right? So
And
for
the
100
universities are
years, though, the
sometimes not government
contract
as well.
said absolutely nothing else. I mean, the only thing that really existed there was a shopping center that was probably there first, maybe, and a Hardee's. I don't know if you remember that, and the Governor's Inn. The Governor's Inn was there before. It was an inn. But I will say this: when that 100-year lease was over, it was crazy. The people were coming in and building apartments, and they were stripping down facilities. There were manufacturing facilities, but majority of it had to be research and development. You could manufacture as long as the majority of your employees were research and development. So
and
that's what it was all about.
That's what it intended to be. And then they shifted in that, because some of those businesses are now very much into manufacturing, because I think Pfizer is there, Glaxo Wellcome is there, a number of other bio farm big farm companies are there as well.
I mean, the whole place has changed. I don't recognize it now. Yes, Rick.
The style of governance in the U.S. is to support private enterprise. And there are people who see socialism everywhere. The same people who go on Twitter and say taxation is theft. And then people say, well, what about libraries and roads? And then somebody, a libertarian, will say, well, those should be turned over to private enterprise and everything will be fine. But like stuff like that, roads, libraries, every country has that stuff, and having them doesn't make that country socialist.
Well, even the universities are oftentimes controlled by government entities. I mean, we have here in North Carolina a group of those that are state run, and then there are some that are private run, and there are a mixture, because NC State is part of the UNC system, even though they're arch rivals, but Duke is separately run. It's a private institution, but definitely
right. But nobody's going woo woo, yay! Universities owned by the state. That would, people don't. That's not American. Even if the university, even if a state-run university is supported by the state, it's not celebrated. It's not.
Well, I mean, y'all get that in California, because isn't the USC system, UCLA, isn't that state-run as well?
UCLA is state-run. USC is private.
Okay, I wasn't sure which one is there. Just really quickly before we wind down and everything in that space, we had talked earlier about World Edition, about Nikki Haley, and I was going to bring this up because apparently she's walked back her comments, because we're talking about what she said in relationship to slavery. So on Thursday, which is today, she addressed the backlash of her Wednesday comments, in which after about what she thought was the cause of the American Civil War, during which she notably did not cite slavery as a cause, and that sparked a lot of criticism. Even on this show, we were having Jacoby earlier that talked about that. And of course, today at a town hall in New Hampshire, she said, of course, the Civil War is about slavery. We know that. That's unquestioned, always the case. We know the Civil War was about slavery. And then she continued to elaborate, telling the crowd that the war was about more than that. It was about freedom of every individual. It was about the role of the government for 80 years. America had the decision and the moral question of whether slavery was a good thing, and whether government, economically, culturally, any other reasons had a role to play in it. But by the grace of God, we did the right thing, and slavery is no more. But the lessons of what the bigger issues about the bigger issues with the Civil War is that let's not forget that what came out of that, which is government's role, individual liberties, freedom for every single person, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to do and be anything you want to be without anyone in government getting in our way. So that
didn't happen after the war. So people had to wait many years before their real freedom and rights were given to them. So I call BS on a lot of that. I watched it, and what I thought she said in the beginning originally was, the Civil Wars began for freedom and for equality. And I thought she kind of said it all without having to use. And, all too often we're told, oh, you can't say that. You can't say this. You can't say that word. You can't say this word. Downplay this word. Upplay that word. I wish somebody would give me a new dictionary honestly, I mean, I still have the old Webster, 300-year-old dusty Webster, but literally you can't say anything in this damn country anymore without someone going, "Oh, you're insulting me." And I hate that. I hate that for Nikki. I hate that for any politician today, because you're going to leave something out. You're going to
leave something out, but I was going to give this last quote and then hear if anybody, including Sasha and Rick, have any thoughts about it. But she then stated that I think it always comes down to the role of government and what the rights of the people are. And we always stand by the fact that I think it was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all peoples. Government doesn't need to tell you how to live your life. They don't need to tell you what you can and can't do. They don't need to be a part of your life. They need to make sure that you have freedom.
People aren't good. They're looking for a moment that encapsulates the candidate in a negative way, the way Mike Dukakis was leading in his election until he got in a tank and they made him put on a helmet, and the helmet made him look ridiculous, and he lost the election.
No, hold on a second. I thought Dukakis lost the election because of the what was the political?
There was another moment.
No,
where somebody asked
I'm thinking about it was it was his name Hill, but it was a candidate. It was a person that got paroled and then he committed crimes again.
That was Willie Horton. There was another time when in a debate, Dukakis was asked, "You're against the death penalty, but what if somebody raped your wife?" And he didn't have a good answer to that. It's a matter of catching the person in a moment that will capture America's attention. Like Joe Biden, somebody puts a sandbag in the wrong place on a stage, Joe Biden trips. Republicans are like, yes. Every president has had trouble with going up and down the steps of Air Force One.
Even before Clinton got caught in the Monica Lewinsky thing, I had the pleasure of doing a coverage of a candidate that got caught in something similar and everything. But how many of you remember a candidate by the name of Gary Hart? Because I literally
he was the first guy
that was going on with Gary Hart, and then he got caught in that whole mess that he got caught in.
Gary Hart was the first guy held culpable for screwing around.
Right.
President Kennedy had a room in the basement for having sex with people not his wife. The press knew a lot about this stuff. They kept quiet about it. It wasn't until Gary Hart, and I think the early 80s.
It was because I just got out of college, so it was like mid to late 80s.
Like they ran pictures of him on a yacht called the Monkey Business with a very pretty young woman named Donna Hart on his lap. Right. Or Donna Hart, Donna. And it scuttled his campaign. And it's all a matter of searching for memorable moments.
Donna Rice was the lady's name.
Donna Rice, yeah, okay. So it's
sort of looking for all the good that somebody can do or has done. They look for that one moment that they can hang you with, and I call it the hangman's noose, right? And they look for that one moment that they can hang you and hang it for the rest of your life. You can do a million good things, and your capabilities could be a million good things, but it's going to be that one thing, just like Biden tripping. And I want to tell you what, some of those stages, especially if they're portable or they're moving.
I've created some. I put up some of those stages, and yes, they can be very.
I was on one for graduation at NC State. I was speaking.
They can be very slippery.
The stage moved on me. It was really weird.
I remember.
By the way, since we're coming up on the end of this show and everything, but that incident we were talking about with Donna Rice was literally on New Year's Eve. So it was New Year's Eve of 86 going into 87 and everything. So who knows?
I remember how delighted I was when the pussy grabbing tape of Donald Trump came out. I was so excited. My wife and I were shopping for a TV, and I'm telling the guy at Best Buy about them, all excited and like my wife's like, he doesn't care. He's selling TVs. Just shut up. And people thought that moment in Trump's life would take him down, and it didn't. And like more recently, he sent out a Christmas greeting that basically said, "Merry Christmas to all, unless you don't like me, and in that case, rotten hell."
That is
And
exactly what he said. But by the way, Rick, I have to ask you this because it was in
You
Aspen,
can't use
Colorado,
New
and everything.
Year's
Were
as
you
an
at the party in
excuse.
'87? Because apparently this New Year's Eve party was in '87 in Aspen. And I know you've got some ties to Aspen.
you know, Aspen's a little bit too fancy and too much far into the mountains for us. I was in, actually, no, that was the year I moved out of Colorado, and I was moved to be with my future wife in New York City.
Gotcha.
I remember very well celebration of a New Year. It was 96, 97. And our friends stayed, we have friends in Los Angeles, so they stayed in some kind of chateau around Lake Como. So, Como, no, forget about Lake, what is there in near Los, not too far from Los Angeles, between Los Angeles and San Francisco. What kind of lake is that?
I know what you mean, but there's Reno, there's
Arena? Okay, and the lake is right next to it, Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
Lake Tahoe. Okay, so they had chateau there, and so we flew to Arena. It was a charter flight, and from there we had to take a limo to this place where they were staying. And it was so much snow that the driver said that he cannot go there. There is impossible to drive. So I asked him, where is it possible to drive from the airport? We want to get out of the airport, just anywhere. He says, South Lake Tahoe, no problem. I say, okay, drive to South Lake Tahoe, because I didn't want to get stuck in the airport. So they arrived, and I saw there Caesar Palace. And I said, oh, go right there. And I had membership with Caesar in Atlantic City, and it was accepted there. So I had a complimentary room, and I played in the casino, and we had wonderful few days there. We arrived probably 5 days before New Year's Eve, and then we talked to our friends back and forth, and they wanted us to come. And I had no desire to come wherever they were staying, because what can be comparable to Caesar Palace? So eventually I arrived. I asked them to come to celebrate New Year's with us at Caesar Palace. So they came and they were impressed, and they said, "Oh yeah, of course it's not comparable to where we're staying." And in the meantime, my wife purchased for me all kind of a ski equipment and some warm clothes and so on. I never even opened it, never used it. And we had great times out skiing. It was a really great New Year.
Great memories.
Exactly.
That's what it's
New
all
Year's
about, right?
New
Great
Year's
memories.
can be a
Before we
bummer
end and
holiday.
everything, before we
That's
end and
beautiful.
everything, and it's definitely the holidays, I hate to tell folks this and all this, but here in North Carolina, if you are going to be watching certain types of productions and television and film, you're going to have your access cut off on January 1st. Because if you are a fan of Pornhub, you apparently here in North Carolina, there's going to be blocked access to North Carolina users, because they're going to have a state law that's going to take effect, because it's going to require the site to verify users' ages. How you're going to verify the user's age online is beyond me and everything, but apparently this is another wonderful policy that North Carolina is about to implement starting January 1st. So
What are they
that
doing
just-
again? What's
They're-
No porn for North Carolina.
On January 1st, Pornhub and other adult sites have blocked access to North Carolina users before a new state law takes effect that will require the sites to verify the user's age. So I guess if you're going to go to those sites,
I want to just tell North Carolina, the stupid idiots, if people want porn, they're going to get it, because that's what paid for the internet. Okay, wake up, people. It paid for the internet. I am not for it. It's not something I am interested in watching and filling my brain with, but it paid for the internet, gaming and porn. I have taught people this for 50 years, it seems like. Get a reality check. You're not going to stop it. In fact, you're going to have more people using it on their phone, because just
this is what they put out. This is actually almost hilarious.
So
but they put out a notice
Governors.
on, because I'm reading it on the North Carolina government. They said, Dear users, as you may know, your elected officials in North Carolina are requiring us to verify your age before allowing you access to our website. While safety and compliance are at the forefront of our mission, giving your ID card every time you want to visit an adult platform is not the most effective solution for protecting our users, and in fact will put children and your privacy at risk. In addition, mandating age verification without proper enforcement gives platforms the opportunity to choose whether or not to comply. As we've seen in other states, this just drives traffic to sites with far fewer safety measures in place. Very few sites are able to compare to the robust, truest trust and safety measures we currently have in place. So to protect children and user safety, any legislation must be enforced against all platforms offering adult content. But apparently they put out a letter and they published it in the local Herald Sun that says, hey, wait a minute, this is what we are going to tell folks and everything. So they are trying to counter the measure with a little bit of PR of their own. But yes, what's going to affect January 1st.
So every time you enter the site, you have to produce ID. Like,
Apparently that's what they're saying.
Let's see if I spend 15 minutes and I'm going for a 15 minutes break. Coming back, I have to register again. How does it work?
Apparently you got to do it every time. That's crazy. I agree with you.
What if I will use somebody else's ID, for example? I mean,
yeah, but how are they going to cover the IDs? That's a good point.
You wait till your parents fall asleep. You go in their wallet.
I'm just saying, unless they're looking at you on a video camera, they have no idea. No idea. You're right, Rick. This is what I'm telling people. If kids want to do it, they're going to do it. If you get a reality check, and you know what, worry about something that's more important in our damn lives and country. We got a bunch of homeless people out there. You're more worried about porn. I have an issue with that. I really do. And so what? So kids watch it and get over it. There are worse things they could be doing with their lives, like doing drugs and shooting up heroin. There are so many worse things in life. I'm not for it, but get the drugs off the street. Okay, now what you're doing is you're pushing them out into the street to do this crap. So no,
there's a flip side. Hold on a second. There's a flip side. There's a flip side of this as well, because there is a very popular chicken franchise that for a long time has not been open on Sundays because they are very religious in orientation and everything. But apparently several New York state lawmakers want to require restaurants at rest stops along the state's 500-mile thoroughway to stay open 7 days a week to serve drivers, including Chick-fil-A, which famously closes on Sunday. So they're trying to put a bill to force Chick-fil-A to be open on Sunday, even though, as I recall, the owners of Chick-fil-A are very religious, and that's part of the reason them. And I think that's it's one of the burger joints.
Yeah, they don't hire gay people either, so I don't eat at Chick-fil-A. So I banned Chick-fil-A the minute they started banning gay people and saying bad things about gay people, because I don't want to eat in an establishment that probably a lot of human lives supported for many years, and then all of a sudden they turn against people. But
also, Popeyes is better chicken.
Yep.
I agree with Popeyes and Bojangles.
Yep, I mean, and Bojangles, which isn't.
We don't have I would love to try Bojangles. We just don't have any Bojangles.
When you come to North Carolina, you know what's so funny? Bojangles is so good. When my son moved to New York, whenever I had to fly up there to visit him, I had to bring a bag of Bojangles through the airport. And the guard there at the checkout, he goes, "Oh no, man, we got to confiscate this."
Oh.
I go, "Oh no, you don't." No, he was joking.
Well, by the way, Lindsey Graham has called this bill about forcing Chick-fil-A to be open. He's calling it insanity, but there's some other things that they do that are insanity as well. But yeah, he's calling it insanity. So Lindsey Graham is going out.
Well, I think we're at the top of the hour at the end of the year, and I look forward to talking to everyone in 2024, and maybe we'll have some positive things to move forward with instead of all of this negative. But until then, everyone, enjoy what you're doing. Don't forget to go shop on our store at podtv.tv. We also have books that are going there, and don't forget to watch some of our investment shows. and the
And
updates
the
on the
Ukraine,
war
Russia, China
with
show.
Ukraine and Russia. We've got so many great, informational news stories that come out every day. So please, tune in to us, support us. We are building and growing, and I'm just so proud of everyone at Pod TV. And we're going to be coming out with even better content next year. So thank you for watching us, and we look forward to everyone in 2024. Have a blessed day.
Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.